25 popular lore stories of Doom. A journey through hell and back. From the Mars bases to the Dark Lord's throne. Introduction. The mythology of rage. Doom is more than a game. It's a mythology that has evolved over 3 decades, weaving together themes of corporate greed, divine intervention, dimensional warfare, and one Marine's refusal to give up. These 25 stories trace the franchise's lore from its humble beginnings in the early 1990s through its modern reimagining, exploring not just what happens in the games, but what it all means. Each story flows into the next, creating a tapestry that spans from before creation itself to potential futures yet unrealized. What follows is meant to be experienced as a relaxing narration, each story building on those before it, revealing connections and depth that might be missed in the heat of combat. So settle in, and let us journey through hell together. 1. The birth of a legend. In the early days of 1993, 4 visionaries gathered in a small office in Madison, Wisconsin. John Romero, John Carmack, Tom Hall, and Adrian Carmack were about to unleash something unprecedented upon the world. They had already proven themselves with Wolfenstein 3D, but what they were planning next would reshape gaming forever. The concept was simple yet revolutionary, a space marine fighting demons from hell on the moons of Mars. But behind this premise lay a tapestry of inspirations, from the horror of Evil Dead to the science fiction of Aliens, all woven together with cutting-edge technology that would define a generation. What many don't realize is that Doom's creation was as chaotic as the game itself. The team worked grueling hours, fueled by pizza and heavy metal music. Tom Hall had written a detailed design document called the Doom Bible, outlining intricate story elements, characters with names and backstories, and a complex narrative structure. But as development progressed, this vision clashed with Carmack's philosophy that story in a game was like story in pornography, expected, but not important. This philosophical divide would shape not just Doom, but the entire first-person shooter genre for decades to come. The technical innovations were equally groundbreaking. Carmack's engine allowed for textured walls, varying floor and ceiling heights, and lighting effects that had never been seen before. But more than the technology, it was the feel of the game that mattered. The weight of the weapons, the visceral feedback of combat, the overwhelming sense of being outnumbered but not outgunned. These elements combined to create an experience that felt primal and immediate. When the shareware version was released on December 10, 1993, it spread like wildfire across the infant internet, with thousands of people downloading it from university servers that buckled under the demand. But beneath the surface action, Doom was telling a story about hubris and consequence. Humanity, in its arrogance, had opened a door that should have remained closed. The UAC's experiments with teleportation technology weren't just scientific breakthroughs. They were violations of cosmic law, attempts to cheat physics that attracted the attention of forces beyond our understanding. This theme of human ambition unleashing catastrophe would resonate throughout the series, a warning wrapped in demon-slaying action. 2. The Lost Bible. The Doom Bible remains one of gaming's most fascinating what-if documents. Tom Hall's vision was far more narrative-driven than what we eventually received. The document described a protagonist named Buddy Ducote, a space marine with a distinct personality and backstory. He wasn't just a nameless avatar, he was meant to have friends, colleagues, and relationships. The game would have featured multiple human allies who would fight alongside you, providing not just tactical support but emotional stakes. When they died, it was supposed to matter. Phobos base, in Hall's vision, was meticulously mapped out. The command center where operations were coordinated, the reactor core that powered everything, the personnel quarters where off-duty Marines relaxed, the medical bay where injuries were treated, the armory where weapons were stored, every location had purpose and context. You weren't just running through abstract corridors. You were moving through a functioning military installation that had been transformed into a nightmare. The design document included layouts, personnel rosters, and even daily schedules for the base's inhabitants. Hall envisioned complex mission objectives that went beyond find the exit. You might need to rescue survivors trapped in sealed sections, or retrieve crucial data from corrupted computer systems, or sabotage demonic portals before they could bring through reinforcements. There would be moral choices. Should you use precious ammunition to save a wounded Marine, or save it for the demons ahead? Should you risk your life for someone else's, or prioritize survival? These elements would have added weight and consequence to the game's violence. But as John Carmack's revolutionary 3D engine took shape, the team realized that the technology itself was the story. Why bog down the experience with lengthy dialogue when you could let players feel the raw terror of encountering a cacodemon in a dark corridor? Hall's detailed vision was gradually stripped away, leaving only the essentials. You're a Marine. There are demons. You have guns. This minimalist approach would become Doom's signature, allowing players to project their own narratives onto the silent protagonist. Yet traces of Hall's vision remained. The names of the episodes, the basic structure of the bases, and the underlying premise of a dimensional gateway gone wrong, all originated from those early design documents. The rejection of the Doom Bible represents a crucial moment in game design philosophy. Hall's approach favored exposition and context, while Carmack and Romero preferred environmental storytelling and player freedom. Neither approach was wrong, but the path Doom took, minimal narrative interference with maximum gameplay freedom, would influence countless games to come. The Bible's legacy lives on in fan discussions and alternate history speculation. What would gaming look like if Doom had gone the story-heavy route? Would first-person shooters have evolved differently? We'll never know, but the document itself stands as a fascinating glimpse into a road not taken. 3. The face behind the helmet. Look at the bottom of your screen during Doom, at that blooded, battle-worn face staring back at you. That face has a name, though it took years for the community to piece together the truth. The original Doom guy was modeled after ID Software employee John Romero himself. Artist Adrian Carmack photographed Romero making various expressions, grimacing, bleeding, looking determined, shocked, berserker enraged, and these photographs became the basis for the iconic status bar face that would become synonymous with the game. In those early days, Doomguy wasn't just any Marine. He was Romero's digital avatar, a piece of the designer embedded directly into the game. But the identity of Doomguy goes deeper than just a visual model. According to various sources and Easter eggs scattered throughout the series, the Doom Slayer, as he would later be known, has been fighting for eons. The manual for the original Doom described him as a space marine stationed on Mars who assaulted a superior officer for ordering his unit to fire upon civilians. As punishment, he was assigned to the Union Aerospace Corporation's Mars base, a dead-end job that should have been uneventful. Instead, it became the beginning of an eternal war. This backstory, though minimal, established something crucial about the character. He has a strong moral compass willing to sacrifice everything for what's right. He's not a glory seeker or a natural warrior. He's someone who did the right thing when it mattered and paid the price for it. Being sent to Mars as punishment should have ended his military career. Instead, it put him in exactly the right place when Hell invaded. His isolation from the command structure, his status as an outsider, meant he wasn't bound by the same protocols that got everyone else killed. He could act on instinct, make decisions without waiting for orders that would never come. As the series evolved, this simple backstory gained layers of complexity. Doom 64's ending suggested that he chose to remain in Hell, sealing himself in that dimension to prevent future invasions. This self-sacrifice transformed him from a soldier into something more, a guardian, a sentinel who would wage eternal war to protect humanity. When Doom 2016 revealed he'd been fighting in Hell for eons, empowered by divine forces and driven by eternal rage, it recontextualized everything. The Marine who punched his commanding officer for giving an immoral order had become a godlike being whose single-minded fury made demons afraid. The continuity of character, from punished soldier to eternal warrior, shows remarkable consistency across decades of games. The Doomguy's face on the status bar became more than just a health indicator. It was a connection between player and character. When that face grins after picking up a new weapon, you feel his satisfaction. When it grimaces in pain after taking damage, you feel his determination. When it enters the golden-eyed berserker state, you share his rage. This simple visual element created empathy and identification in ways that lengthy cutscenes might never achieve. You weren't watching someone else's story unfold. You were living it, one blood-spattered corridor at a time. 4. Corporate evil and dimensional rifts. The Union Aerospace Corporation wasn't just careless. They were knowingly playing with forces beyond comprehension. Deep within their research facilities on the moons of Mars, scientists had discovered something that shouldn't exist, a way to punch through the fabric of reality itself. The teleportation experiments weren't merely about instantaneous transportation between 2 points in our universe. They were about accessing other dimensions, other planes of existence that operated under different physical laws. The UAC's executives knew the risks. Internal documents, scattered throughout the games as data logs and emails, reveal a pattern of ignored warnings, silenced whistleblowers, and profit-driven decisions that put the entire human race at risk. What makes the UAC's story particularly chilling is its plausibility. This isn't a cartoon villain organization run by mustache-twirling madmen. In Doom 3, we see the corporation at its most realized, a massive industrial complex where scientists work alongside military contractors, where every ethical guideline is bent in pursuit of unlimited energy and military superiority. Dr. Betruger, the lead scientist, wasn't corrupted by demonic forces from the start. He was corrupted by ambition, by the tantalizing possibility of harnessing hell itself as a power source. The demons didn't invade. They were invited, one calculation at a time, one ethical compromise after another. The UAC's gradual descent into catastrophe follows a pattern familiar from real-world disasters. First came the theoretical possibility: what if we could create stable teleportation? Then the initial successes, small objects transported successfully, energy readings that exceeded all expectations. Then the anomalies, test subjects reporting psychological effects, visions, voices. Then the rationalizations. These effects are temporary, the benefits outweigh the risks, we just need to refine the process. Then the point of no return, the portals growing stronger and harder to shut down, entities on the other side becoming aware of us, security protocols compromised in the name of data collection. This theme would echo through every Doom game. Humanity's greatest threat isn't the monsters from another dimension, but our own hubris and greed that opens the door to them. The UAC represents the darkest version of the military-industrial complex, where profit motive and classified research create conditions where catastrophic mistakes become inevitable. No single person decided to doom humanity. It was a collective failure, each individual making locally reasonable decisions that added up to global catastrophe. This is perhaps more frightening than any demon, the banality of evil, the bureaucracy of damnation. In Doom 2016 and Eternal, the UAC's evil becomes even more explicit. They are not just opening portals by accident. They are deliberately harvesting Argent energy, refined suffering extracted from tortured souls. Samuel Hayden presents this as a solution to Earth's energy crisis, a utilitarian bargain where the needs of the many outweigh the suffering of the few. But the few in this equation are entire dimensions of beings, processed through hell's machinery and converted into power for humanity's comfort. The UAC became willing to fuel civilization itself with the screams of the damned, all while maintaining the corporate facade of progress and innovation. 5. Phobos Anomaly. Episode 1 of Doom ends with a level called Phobos Anomaly, and it's here that players first glimpse the true scope of the disaster. You've fought your way through the entire Phobos base, battling increasingly dangerous demons, thinking you're making progress towards securing the facility. The level design itself tells a story. The environments become progressively more corrupted, with demonic textures bleeding through the metal walls, organic growth spreading across technological surfaces. You're not just seeing hell invade, you're witnessing the transformation of human space into demonic territory. Then you step into the final room and find yourself teleported to a hellish chamber, surrounded by demonic architecture and otherworldly geometry. The walls are made of flesh and bone, technological elements mixed impossibly with organic components. You're confronted by two barons of hell, towering demons that have been shepherding you toward this moment. The implication is clear. The entire moon of Phobos isn't just infested, it's been transformed, claimed, converted into an extension of Hell's dimension. The anomaly detected by scientists wasn't a malfunction or random occurrence. It was a successful invasion, a beachhead established by forces that had been waiting for millennia for someone foolish enough to open the door. What fans have theorized for years is that Phobos itself became a hybrid location, neither fully in our reality nor completely in Hell's dimension. The strange architecture, the impossible spaces, the way rooms seem to connect in ways that defy Euclidean geometry, these aren't just level design quirks or limitations of the technology. They are evidence of dimensional bleeding, where Hell's realm is slowly consuming our universe, 1 cubic meter at a time. The physical laws that govern Hell's dimension are different from ours, and where the two overlap, reality itself becomes unstable and malleable. The Phobos Anomaly wasn't the invasion's beginning. It was the moment when Hell's forces had achieved critical mass, when they had enough of a foothold to start reshaping reality according to their own malevolent physics. Think of it like an infection spreading through a body. The first few cells compromised are negligible, barely noticeable. But once a certain threshold is reached, the infection can spread exponentially, overwhelming the body's defenses. Phobos had reached that threshold. The Marines' journey through the base wasn't a rescue mission or a defensive action. It was reconnaissance through enemy territory that was already lost. This revelation changes everything about how we understand the game's narrative. You weren't fighting to save Phobos, you were documenting its fall, gathering intelligence about an enemy that humanity had never encountered before. Every demon killed, every room cleared, every weapon found was data, learning how Hell's forces operated, what killed them, what made them vulnerable. The Phobos Anomaly level, then, is the Marine's first direct contact with Hell's true nature, the moment when he stops fighting Earth's battle and starts fighting Hell's war. It's where a soldier becomes the Doom Slayer. 6. Deimos Descending. Between episodes 1 and 2, something impossible happens. Deimos, Mars's second moon, vanishes from the sky. Astronomers tracking the Phobos disaster suddenly report that Deimos is no longer where it should be. Scans show nothing, no debris field, no evidence of destruction. It's simply gone. Moons don't just disappear. They are massive celestial bodies bound by gravity and orbital mechanics. For Deimos to vanish violates everything we understand about physics. But Deimos didn't leave our universe. It was taken, dragged wholesale into Hell's dimension, the entire moon becoming an island floating in an ocean of eternal fire and torment. When the Doom Guy fights his way to Deimos in episode 2, he's not just traveling to another location in space, he's crossing dimensional boundaries, stepping into a realm where physics works differently, where the very concept of space and time becomes fluid and nightmarish. The journey itself is disorienting. You teleport from Phobos, expecting to arrive at another military installation. Instead, you emerge onto a moon that's surrounded not by the black void of space but by a red sky filled with impossible structures and floating geometric impossibilities. Looking down from Deimos' surface, you see not Mars below but Hell's landscape stretching to infinity. The genius of this narrative device is that it escalates the threat exponentially while simultaneously expanding the game's scope. If Hell can claim an entire moon, pulling it physically out of our dimension and into theirs, what's to stop them from doing the same to Earth? The battles on Deimos aren't just about survival, they are about reconnaissance. Every demon slain, Every territory reclaimed is information gathered about an enemy that operates on a scale humans can barely comprehend. You're learning that hell isn't just powerful, it's reality-shaping powerful, capable of manipulating fundamental physical laws. The architecture of Deimos becomes increasingly alien as you progress, showing the gradual transformation from human military installation to demonic stronghold. Early levels still show recognizable human structures: corridors, storage rooms, command centers. But these spaces are corrupted, twisted. Metal walls pulse as if breathing. Computer terminals display incomprehensible symbols. Doorways lead to rooms that couldn't possibly fit in the spaces they occupy. By the later levels, the distinction between Deimos and Hell becomes meaningless. You're fighting through structures that are simultaneously moon base and demonic temple, where every surface exists in both dimensions at once. This physical transformation mirrors a deeper truth. Hell doesn't just destroy what it touches, it corrupts and converts it, turning our own creations against us. The teleportation technology meant to advance humanity becomes the mechanism of its potential destruction. The military bases meant to protect us become staging grounds for invasion. Even our scientific understanding becomes weaponized against us. Deimos's fate is a preview of what could happen to Earth, not just conquered, but fundamentally changed, pulled into Hell's dimension and remade according to demonic design. The Doom Guy must prevent this not through conventional military victory, but by disrupting the process of dimensional conversion itself. 7. The Icon of Sin. At the end of Doom 2, players face one of gaming's most memorable boss battles, a massive demonic face embedded in a wall, its forehead split open to reveal a corrupted brain, ceaselessly spawning monsters into the arena below. For years, this was understood as just a challenging final encounter, a puzzle boss where you had to use rocket launchers to hit the exposed brain. But John Romero embedded a secret that wouldn't be discovered until much later, when players started examining the game's audio files more carefully. If you record the Icon of Sin's death sound and play it backwards, you hear a distorted voice saying to win the game, "You must kill me, John Romero." This wasn't just an Easter egg or a joke. It was a declaration, a metatextual commentary on the relationship between designer and player. The Icon of Sin wasn't just a demon. It was Romero himself, the game designer literally placing himself as the ultimate obstacle between players and victory. To beat Doom 2, you must, quite literally, kill John Romero. This added a layer of meaning to the battle that transcended the narrative. You weren't just fighting Hell's ultimate weapon, you were fighting the mind that created the game. But the lore goes deeper. The Icon of Sin isn't just a boss, it's a factory, a living gateway that can spawn unlimited demonic forces into our dimension. In Doom's mythology, as later established in Doom Eternal, the Icon represents Hell's ultimate weapon, the ability to corrupt and transform an entire planet. Each icon is unique, crafted from the remains of a betrayer or a conquered champion, turned into a monument of Hell's victory. The face isn't decoration, it's the consciousness of the victim, trapped eternally in the act of destroying worlds, forced to witness the damnation they helped cause. The icon functions as a dimensional anchor, a permanent tear in reality that cannot simply be closed. As long as it exists, demons can pour through without limit. Worse, the icon itself radiates corruption, slowly transforming everything around it. Given enough time, an Icon of Sin will convert an entire planet into an extension of Hell's dimension, just as happened to Phobos and Deimos. The battle isn't just about destroying a single enemy, it's about shutting down a process of planetary corruption before it reaches an irreversible point. This makes the Icon of Sin's appearance in Doom Eternal all the more significant. When the icon is resurrected on Earth, it's revealed that this particular icon was created from the remains of the betrayer's son. The betrayer, one of the Night Sentinels, had been tricked by Hell into revealing the location of his dimension's defenses in exchange for his son's resurrection. Hell kept its promise. His sun lived again, but as a mockery, transformed into a tool of planetary destruction. The icon of sin is thus not just a weapon but a monument to a father's grief and Hell's cruelty. To destroy it is both a military necessity and a mercy, ending the tortured existence of a being who should have been allowed to rest but was instead made into an engine of apocalypse. 8. Thy Flesh Consumed, the Lost Episode. When the Ultimate Doom was released in 1995, it included a fourth episode that many players missed, Thy Flesh Consumed. This wasn't just additional content or a bonus chapter. It was a glimpse into what Doom could have been if the designers had pushed even harder, if they'd decided that the original 3 episodes were merely training for the real challenge. The episode is brutally difficult from the very first level, throwing high-tier demons at players in combinations and quantities that would have been reserved for late-game encounters in the original episodes. But Thy Flesh Consumed doesn't just add difficulty, it tells a darker story. Taking place after the events of the original 3 episodes, it reveals that the Doomguy's victory was temporary, a tactical success in a strategic failure. Hell doesn't give up, it regroups, it adapts, and it comes back stronger. The Marine thought he'd closed the portals, thought he'd pushed the demons back. But Hell has patience, and more importantly, Hell learns from its mistakes. The episode's levels show increasing signs of demonic corruption, with hellish architecture bleeding into the military installations more aggressively than before. The demons themselves seem more organized, their placements more tactical, their ambushes better coordinated. The environmental storytelling in Thy Flesh Consumed is particularly noteworthy. Early levels show bases that have been abandoned and later reoccupied by demonic forces. You find evidence of evacuation attempts, barricades hastily constructed, supply caches left behind, defensive positions that were overrun. The humans tried to hold these facilities, tried to maintain some kind of foothold, and they failed. By the later levels, the corruption is so complete that you can barely tell the locations were ever human at all. Entire structures have been transformed into organic demon hives, pulsing with malevolent life. This subtle evolution suggested something fans would theorize for years. Hell is learning. Each invasion isn't just brute force, it's a probing attack, testing humanity's defenses, studying our tactics, adapting to our strategies. The demons in Thy Flesh Consumed aren't just stronger, they are smarter. They use the environment better, set traps more effectively, coordinate their attacks with more sophistication. If the first invasion was Hell throwing its full force at humanity without understanding what they faced, Thy Flesh Consumed represents the second wave, where Hell has learned from the first battle and adjusted its approach. The episode's final level, Fear, takes place in a location that's impossible to categorize. It's neither fully in our dimension nor completely in Hell's. The geometry defies logic, rooms connect in ways that shouldn't work, and the very air feels wrong. This represents the ultimate threat, not just demon armies, but the bleeding of dimensions, the corruption of reality itself. The Doomguy might win individual battles, might kill endless hordes of demons, but Hell is playing a longer game, one that spans dimensions and eons. Every victory is temporary because Hell itself is eternal, and it will keep coming back, learning and adapting, until it finds a way to win permanently. 9. The Master Levels, Training for Armageddon. Master levels for Doom 2 represented something unique in the franchise's evolution. Levels designed by the community's best mapmakers, officially sanctioned and released by ID Software. These weren't just fan projects or mods existing in legal grey areas. They were canonical additions to the Doom universe, created by players who had mastered the game so thoroughly that they could challenge even expert players. But within these challenging maps lies an interesting piece of meta-lore that ties them into the broader narrative. These levels, canonically, represent simulations and training scenarios created by survivors of the demonic invasions. Think about it from the perspective of the UAC or Earth's military command after the events of Doom and Doom 2. They've faced an existential threat unlike anything in human history. Demons from another dimension have invaded multiple facilities, killed thousands, and nearly claimed Earth itself. Only one Marine survived these encounters, and his tactics, aggressive, relentless, seemingly suicidal by conventional military doctrine, were the only effective response. The question becomes, how do you prepare for future invasions when conventional military thinking failed so spectacularly? The answer: study the Doom Guy. Analyze every decision he made, every route he took, every weapon choice and combat engagement. Recreate his battles in virtual environments, making them even harder to test the limits of the tactics. Train a new generation of soldiers not in conventional warfare, but in the specific art of demon slaying that the Doom Guy pioneered. The master levels, then, aren't just gameplay challenges. They are humanity's attempt to replicate and surpass what one Marine accomplished through determination and instinct. This concept becomes fascinating when you consider its implications. It means that in Doom's universe, the Doom Guy's actions are studied, analyzed, and recreated. He's not just a soldier anymore, he's become a legend, a template for how to fight hell itself. Military academies teach Slayer tactics. Scientists study the psychology of his relentless aggression. Engineers design weapons based on what he proved effective. The extreme difficulty of the master levels reflects this. They are not just hard because designers wanted a challenge. They are hard because they represent hell learning and adapting to the Slayer's tactics. Every pattern the Doom Guy uses, hell is studying and preparing counters for. If he tends to circle strafe while fighting cyberdemons, hell trains its forces to counter this. If he uses doorways as choke points, hell designs encounters that nullify this advantage. This cat-and-mouse escalation between the Slayer and Hell's forces would become a core theme in later games. The master levels canonically represent this arms race, humanity trying to stay ahead by training harder, Hell trying to stay ahead by learning faster. Neither side can afford to stagnate because stagnation means extinction. The result is an eternal competition of innovation and adaptation, where every victory contains the seeds of future challenges. 10. Final Doom's dual campaigns, TNT and Plutonia. Final Doom presented players with two separate campaigns that seemed disconnected from each other, TNT, Evolution, and the Plutonia Experiment. Officially, these were treated as alternate scenarios or side stories, additional adventures that didn't necessarily fit into the main timeline. But the community has long debated their canonical status, with compelling arguments that both campaigns reveal crucial information about Hell's invasion strategy and humanity's response. Understanding these campaigns requires seeing them not as separate stories but as two perspectives on the same terrifying truth. Hell's invasion of Earth wasn't a single event, but a coordinated multidimensional assault. TNT, Evolution tells of a UAC operation on one of Jupiter's moons, where researchers continued experiments despite everything that had happened on Mars. This reveals something damning about the UAC's structure. Even after catastrophic failures, even after thousands of deaths, different divisions of the corporation were still conducting dimensional research. There was no company-wide shutdown, no fundamental change in policy. The mindset that led to the Mars disaster, profits over safety, scientific curiosity over ethical concerns, persisted. The Jupiter facility, thinking they could avoid Mars's mistakes, implemented more security protocols, better containment measures. But they made the fatal error of assuming Hell could be controlled if you were just careful enough. What makes TNT's campaign particularly interesting tonally is how it evolves. Early levels feel like a traditional military operation gone wrong. There's still structure, organization, clear objectives. You're securing facilities, protecting critical installations, following something resembling a command structure. It feels like this is a problem that can be contained through proper military response. But as the campaign progresses, this illusion breaks down. The military organization crumbles. Objectives become survival-focused rather than mission-focused. By the end, you're no longer operating within any kind of command structure. You're simply killing demons and looking for a way out, just like the original Doom. The Plutonia experiment, meanwhile, depicts an even more disturbing scenario: Earth-based research that proves the UAC learned nothing from previous disasters. Named after the plutonium processing facilities where it takes place, this campaign shows demonic invasion on Earth's surface rather than isolated space installations. The demons here are more aggressive, their placements suggesting this invasion was somehow more successful than previous ones. Encounters throw multiple high-tier demons at you simultaneously from the very first levels. There's no ramp-up, no gradual escalation. It's immediate chaos, suggesting Hell's forces were already well established when you arrive. Some fans theorize that Plutonia represents a timeline where the Doom guy failed, where Hell established a more permanent foothold on Earth. This would explain why the campaign is so brutally difficult. You're not just fighting demons, you're fighting a losing war. The campaign's final levels don't feel like victory marches toward a final confrontation. They feel like desperate last stands, fighting not to win but to delay the inevitable. The implication that Final Doom's campaigns might be alternate timelines or different fronts of a larger invasion makes them more significant than mere expansion packs. They are glimpses of what could have been or what might be happening simultaneously in other locations, proof that Hell's threat is far more extensive than any single Marine can fully address. 11. Doom 64, the Forgotten Sequel. For years, Doom 64 existed in a strange limbo, a console-exclusive sequel that many PC players never experienced, dismissed by some as a mere port when it was actually a completely new game. But those who played it discovered something darker than anything ID Software had created before, a game that took Doom's horror elements seriously and crafted an atmosphere of genuine dread. Set after Doom 2, the game revealed that the UAC's response to demonic invasion was characteristic of their organization. Rather than abandoning the Mars facilities permanently, they decided to return and clean them up, treating interdimensional invasion like an industrial accident that could be sanitized and swept under the rug. Every demon was supposedly eliminated through systematic military operations. Every portal was supposedly closed and sealed. The Doom guy, who by this point had saved humanity multiple times, volunteered for a solo mop-up mission to finish the job. This decision tells us something crucial about the character. He couldn't just walk away. Even after all he'd been through, even knowing the horrors he'd face, he couldn't trust anyone else to make sure the job was done right. Perhaps he also couldn't return to normal life. Having seen what he'd seen, done what he'd done, how could he go back to being just another soldier? But when he arrived on Mars, he found something waiting, something that had survived by being patient, by hiding, by being smart enough to wait for its moment. The Mother Demon, Doom 64's final boss, represented a new type of threat that fundamentally changed our understanding of Hell's forces. She wasn't just another big demon, wasn't simply more powerful than the others. She was intelligent, capable of strategy and deception. More importantly, she possessed the ability to resurrect fallen demons, meaning every demon killed could potentially return. This made her not just a tactical threat but an existential one. As long as she lived, the demon army could never be permanently defeated. The Mother Demon's existence suggested something terrifying about Hell's organization. There was hierarchy, command structure, specialized roles. The demons weren't just weapons. They were a civilization with biology, reproduction, and tactical doctrine. The Mother Demon could create more demons, meaning Hell's forces weren't limited to whatever could be summoned through portals. They could grow, breed, establish self-sustaining populations in our dimension. If she had established herself in the Mars bases, given time she could have turned them into spawning grounds for a demon army that didn't need Hell's dimension to sustain it. But Doom 64's true significance comes from its ending, particularly the secret final level, the Absolution, accessible only by collecting all demon keys throughout the campaign. This level represents the Doom guy's conscious decision to remain in Hell rather than return home. Unlike other Doom games where the hero escapes and goes home, this ending is deliberately ambiguous and dark. After defeating the Mother Demon, The Marine walks away from the portal that would return him to Earth, choosing instead to venture deeper into hell. The implications are staggering, his accepting eternal damnation, eternal combat, eternal suffering, all to protect humanity from future invasions. This ending would later be canonized as the bridge between classic Doom and the modern reboots. The Marine who chose to stay in hell, who fought for eons in that nightmare dimension, would eventually be found by the Night Sentinels and empowered to become the Doom Slayer. Doom 64 thus represents the moment when a soldier became a legend, when the human Marine began his transformation into something far greater and far more terrible. It's a story of sacrifice that goes beyond heroism into something darker, a recognition that sometimes the only way to protect others is to damn yourself, to become the monster that monsters fear. 12. The Threshold of Pain, the choice to stay. The secret final level of Doom 64, titled The Absolution, can only be accessed by collecting all the demon keys throughout the campaign. 3 ancient artifacts hidden in the most dangerous locations, each guarded by Hell's most powerful servants. This isn't just a gameplay secret, it's a narrative choice that reflects the Doomguy's journey. To reach this ending, you must prove absolute mastery over Hell's forces, demonstrating the same relentless determination that the Marine himself embodies. Only someone who has conquered every challenge, explored every dark corner, and refused to leave any demon alive can access the truth of what happens next. The Absolution level itself is unlike anything else in Doom 64. The architecture is surreal, dreamlike, combining elements from every previous level into a nightmarish amalgamation. You walk through corridors that shift and change, fighting demons that seem more symbolic than real. The level design suggests this isn't a physical location but a metaphysical space, perhaps the Marine's own mind, wrestling with the most important decision of his life. Every room presents a choice, forward into darkness, or back toward the light of home. And then you reach the portal. It's there, stable and waiting, the way back to Earth. After everything you've been through, after all the death and horror, you could simply step through and return to humanity. The UAC would declare you a hero. Medals, commendations, a comfortable retirement, all of it waiting on the other side of that portal. Normal life could resume. You could try to forget the nightmares, try to become just another soldier with a troubled past. The game doesn't tell you this explicitly, but the implication is clear in the level's design. Salvation is available. You've earned it. But the Doomguy makes a different choice. He walks past the portal, away from Earth, deeper into hell. The camera follows him as he ventures into the red wastes, into dimensions of suffering that make the Mars bases look like paradise by comparison. This isn't suicide or despair, it's acceptance of a terrible truth. Hell can never be permanently defeated from the outside. Close the portals, and Hell will find new ones. Kill the demons, and Hell will spawn more. The only way to truly protect humanity is to stay in Hell, to become a permanent presence in that dimension, an eternal guardian preventing future invasions at their source. This sacrifice transforms the character's nature fundamentally. The Marine is accepting eternal damnation, choosing to become something other than human. He'll fight forever in a realm where time moves differently, where death is temporary but suffering is constant. He'll lose his name, his humanity, perhaps even his sanity. But humanity will be safe. Earth will be protected. That's the bargain he makes, walking away from the portal, his soul for their safety. No one will know what he gave up. No one will understand the true cost of their protection. He'll become a legend in Hell, the entity demons whisper about in terror, but on Earth he'll just be another soldier who died on Mars. What happens to a human mind in Hell? How long can someone fight before they lose themselves completely? The Doomguy's choice to stay isn't just heroic, it's potentially suicidal, a recognition that he can never go back to normal life anyway. He's seen too much, done too much, killed too much. The horror of Hell is now part of who he is. Going home would mean bringing that darkness back to Earth. Better to leave it where it belongs, to become Hell's problem rather than humanity's. The Doom Slayer isn't born from the divinity machine or maker technology. He's born here, in this moment, when a man chooses damnation to save his world. Everything that comes after, the Night Sentinels, the divine empowerment, the legendary status, builds on this foundation, a human who freely chose to sacrifice everything. 13. Development of Doom 3, the horror reboot. When ID Software announced Doom 3 in the early 2000s, expectations were stratospheric. They'd revolutionized gaming twice already, once with Doom, once with Quake, and John Carmack had developed a revolutionary new engine that could render shadows and lighting in real time, creating atmospheric horror that previous technology couldn't achieve. Early demonstrations showed flashlights casting dynamic shadows, demons emerging from darkness, and environments that felt genuinely dangerous rather than just visually impressive. The tech was stunning, but the question remained, what kind of game would use it? The decision to shift Doom from fast-paced action to slow-paced horror was controversial from the start within ID Software itself. Some team members argued that Doom's core appeal was empowerment fantasy, you versus hordes of demons, heavily armed and highly mobile. Slowing that down, emphasizing vulnerability and limited resources, might preserve the name but lose the essence. Others countered that the original Doom was actually terrifying when it first released, that the horror had been lost only because players became too skilled, too comfortable. Doom 3 could recapture that initial fear, that sense of genuine danger that made the first Phobos levels so memorable. The team decided to explore the premise that earlier games had glossed over. What would it actually be like to be on a Mars base when hell broke through? The original Doom started with you already fighting demons, already armed, already in combat mode. Doom 3 would show the before, the ordinary workplace moments, the routine day that becomes extraordinary catastrophe. You'd see scientists going about their research, Marines complaining about boring guard duty, engineers fixing equipment. Then you'd watch it all collapse, watch ordinary people transform into terrified victims or possessed monsters. The game would answer the question, how does Hell's invasion actually happen in real time? This approach required fundamental gameplay changes that divided the fanbase. The famous flashlight limitation, you couldn't hold a weapon and flashlight simultaneously, became emblematic of the game's design philosophy. It was technically unnecessary. Carmack's engine could certainly render lights attached to guns. But the limitation was deliberate, forcing players to choose between seeing threats and fighting them, adding tension through mechanical restriction. Every dark corridor became a decision. Light up and see what's there but be unable to respond quickly, or keep your weapon ready but advance blind. The horror came from uncertainty and vulnerability, not from overwhelming odds. The most significant change was making everything more grounded and realistic, which ironically made it less doomed to many fans. The Marine had a face, a voice actor who grunted in pain and breathed heavily when injured. He existed in a world with named characters who had relationships and backstories. You'd find emails between co-workers planning poker games, video logs of scientists arguing about experimental protocols, audio diaries revealing romantic affairs and professional rivalries. The UAC wasn't an abstract evil corporation. It was a fully realized organization with hierarchy, politics, and internal conflicts where most people were just doing their jobs, unaware their workplace would become ground zero for an interdimensional invasion. Dr. Betruger wasn't just generically evil. He was ambitious, charismatic, and gradually corrupted by the promise of unlimited power. You could trace his descent through found documents and overheard conversations. Early emails showed him as aggressive but principled, pushing boundaries but still within recognizable scientific norms. Later communications revealed increasing obsession, ethical compromises rationalized as necessary for progress, secret experiments he kept hidden even from UAC leadership. By the time the invasion begins, Betruger has been compromised for months, perhaps years, slowly transformed by something whispering from the other side of the portals. This narrative richness came at a cost. The breakneck pace that defined classic Doom was replaced with careful, tense exploration. Resources were genuinely scarce. You had to decide whether using a health pack now was worth potentially needing it more later. Combat became about precision and positioning rather than circle-strafing hordes. The game encouraged you to move slowly, check corners, listen for audio cues warning of ambushes. It was terrifying and atmospheric, creating moments of genuine dread that modern horror games still reference. But the question lingered among fans and critics: was it Doom? Had they made a great horror game that happened to use Doom's iconography, or had they successfully evolved Doom into something new? The debate continues to this day. 14. Dr. Betruger's Fall, the scientist who opened the gate. Malcolm Betruger is perhaps Doom's most fully realized villain, a character whose descent into evil is documented meticulously through Doom 3's environmental storytelling. Unlike the abstract forces of darkness in previous games, unlike demons who are evil by nature, Betruger is distinctly human, a brilliant scientist whose ambition made him vulnerable to corruption. He wasn't born evil, wasn't naturally inclined toward destruction. He was driven by the same impulses that motivate many high-achieving scientists: curiosity, ambition, the desire to be remembered for changing human understanding of reality. That these impulses led to damnation makes his story tragic as much as villainous. The earliest emails and logs show Betruger as simply an aggressive researcher, someone willing to push ethical boundaries to achieve results but not yet truly villainous. He silences concerns about the psychological effects of teleportation on test subjects, dismissing warnings as overreaction from squeamish colleagues. He ignores recommendations for additional safety protocols because they would slow research progress. He views himself as a visionary, someone willing to make hard choices that others lack the courage to make. In his mind, he's not endangering anyone, he's advancing human knowledge, taking necessary risks that timid minds would avoid. But the logs reveal something more sinister developing gradually. Test subjects begin reporting strange effects beyond normal teleportation disorientation. They describe hearing voices, seeing visions of another place, feeling watched by hostile presences. Some subjects refuse to participate in further experiments, claiming the experience violated them somehow, left them feeling corrupted or stained. Betruger's response is telling. He doesn't investigate these claims thoroughly but rather excludes complainants from future tests and seeks more cooperative subjects. He's not ignoring warning signs because he doesn't see them, he's ignoring them because acknowledging them would mean stopping the research. The turning point comes when Betruger makes direct contact with something on the other side. The exact moment isn't shown explicitly, but you can piece together the timeline from scattered documents. Suddenly his research takes a new direction, one he keeps hidden from most of his colleagues. Experiments begin focusing on stabilizing larger portals, maintaining them for longer durations, allowing passage of objects, and eventually beings, more substantial than the probes and instruments previously used. Betruger starts requisitioning odd materials, ancient artifacts recovered from Mars's archaeological sites, exotic energy sources, equipment that seems more occult than scientific. What did hell promise him? The game hints at several possibilities. Power, certainly, the ability to harness unlimited energy that would make him the most important scientist in human history. Knowledge, understanding of dimensions and physics beyond human comprehension, secrets that would rewrite every scientific textbook. Perhaps even immortality, the whispered promise that has corrupted humans for millennia. But there's another possibility suggested by Betruger's personal logs. He made contact with something that simply made him believe the invasion was inevitable, that humanity's best chance for survival was to ally with hell rather than oppose it. In his corrupted mind, he's not betraying humanity, he's negotiating humanity's surrender before we're completely destroyed. The invasion proceeds exactly according to Betruger's planning. He disables security protocols at crucial moments, ensuring portals remain open long enough for Hell's forces to establish footholds. He creates diversions that pull security forces away from critical areas. He feeds false information to UAC leadership, assuring them that containment is holding when it's actually collapsing. When the invasion finally goes public, when demons are rampaging through the facility and thousands are dying, Betruger broadcasts a chilling message to the survivors, his not apologizing. His welcoming Hell's forces, declaring the old world finished and a new age beginning. In his mind, he's still a visionary, just one whose vision involves humanity's subjugation rather than advancement. His transformation into a demonic entity at the game's end, specifically into a cybernetic monstrosity, part demon and part machine, is both literal and metaphorical. The corruption that was moral and spiritual throughout the game becomes physical and visible. But the transformation reveals something important. Betruger didn't gain the power or immortality he sought. He became a weapon, a tool for Hell's purposes, his mind and body warped into service of an agenda that has nothing to do with his original ambitions. He thought he was making a deal with Hell. He was actually just being consumed by it, one compromise at a time, until nothing of the original man remained. His story serves as a warning. Hell doesn't offer partnership, only transformation, corruption, and ultimately, extinction of the self. 15. The Soul Cube, the ancient Martian artifact. One of Doom 3's most significant lore additions was the revelation that Mars had been inhabited by an advanced civilization long before humans arrived. Not thousands of years ago but millions of years in the past. The discovery of ruins beneath the UAC facility should have been the century's greatest archaeological find, proof of alien civilizations and advanced ancient technology. Instead, it became a warning that humanity, in its characteristic hubris, completely ignored. The ruins told a story, one that archaeological and linguistic teams painstakingly translated over years of study. Mars had faced the same threat Earth now confronted, and the Martians had lost. 8 million years ago, Mars was a living world with oceans, atmosphere, and a thriving civilization. The Martians were technologically sophisticated, having mastered energy manipulation, architectural engineering, and perhaps even early dimensional physics. They built great cities that reached toward their pink sky, created art and culture, developed philosophy and science. In many ways, their civilization paralleled humanity's, curious, ambitious, constantly pushing the boundaries of knowledge. And like humanity would millions of years later, they made the catastrophic mistake of opening a door to Hell. The exact circumstances differ in details but not in essence. Martian scientists discovered a way to access other dimensions, sought to harness energy from these exotic spaces, and in doing so, attracted Hell's attention. When the portals opened, demons poured through just as they would on Phobos and Earth. The Martian military fought back with advanced weapons and coordinated tactics, but they faced the same problem humanity would encounter. Hell's forces were limitless, self-sustaining, and adaptive. For every demon killed, more came through. For every portal closed, Hell opened new ones. The Martian civilization, despite its sophistication, began losing a war of attrition. Facing extinction, the Martians made a decision of unimaginable sacrifice. Their greatest scientists and spiritual leaders came together to create a weapon powerful enough to close the portals permanently. But the power source couldn't be conventional energy or technology. It had to be something Hell couldn't corrupt or convert. Pure soul energy from beings who willingly sacrificed themselves. One by one, the entire Martian population entered a massive ritual chamber. They weren't killed. They chose to dissolve their essence into pure energy, contributing their very souls to create the Soul Cube. The process took an entire race and transformed them into a single artifact. The last Martian alive sealed the Soul Cube in a temple deep beneath the surface, along with warnings carved in stone and embedded in the artifact itself. This has happened before. It will happen again. Do not repeat our mistakes. Do not open doors to Hell. If you ignore these warnings, here is the weapon you'll need to close the portals we couldn't close. Then that final Martian activated the Soul Cube, which released enough energy to seal every Hell portal on Mars simultaneously and create a dimensional barrier that made the planet difficult for Hell to access again. This backstory recontextualized everything about Doom's universe. Hell wasn't just after Earth. It had been conquering worlds for millions of years, perhaps billions. The demons' presence on Mars wasn't coincidence. They had been there before, and they remembered. The planet itself was a battlefield in an ancient war that predated human existence. When the UAC established their research facilities, they literally built on top of this ancient catastrophe, their state-of-the-art labs sitting above temples built to contain warnings about the very experiments they were conducting. The irony is so perfect it seems intentional. Humanity found the warnings and studied them as archaeology while ignoring their message. The Soul Cube itself became a playable artifact in Doom 3, a weapon the Marine could use against Hell's forces. But using it requires killing demons to charge it, meaning the weapon literally runs on its wielder's effectiveness at demon slaying. This created an interesting narrative parallel. The Martians sacrificed themselves to create a weapon to save their world, and now a human uses that sacrifice to save his. The Soul Cube represents hope, proof that Hell can be defeated, that dimensional invasion isn't inevitably victorious. But it also represents terrible cost. Victory required an entire species choosing extinction to deny Hell its prize. The most haunting question the Soul Cube raises: would humanity have the courage to make the same sacrifice if necessary? Could we forge a weapon from the souls of every human to save Earth from Hell? Would we even need to? Or has the Doom Slayer, empowered by divine forces and fighting with eternal rage, become humanity's answer to the question the Martians faced? Perhaps one enhanced human fighting forever is humanity's version of the Martian sacrifice. Not everyone dying at once, but one person accepting eternal combat so the rest can live. The Soul Cube stands as both warning and promise. Warning of what can happen when curiosity exceeds wisdom. Promise that even when facing extinction, intelligent beings can fight back and win. 16. Delta Labs Horror, where science met damnation. Delta Labs served as Doom 3's heart of darkness, the epicenter where humanity's ambition collided most directly with forces beyond comprehension. This wasn't a single facility but a massive complex consisting of multiple sectors, Delta 1, 2, 3, and 4, each connected by teleportation systems that were themselves experimental. The labs represented the cutting edge of human science, where theoretical physics met practical engineering, where the boundary between possible and impossible was systematically dismantled. On the surface, it was simply cutting-edge research, pushing the boundaries of dimensional theory and teleportation technology. But reading between the lines of the scattered logs and emails reveals a darker truth unfolding over months or years. The facility's layout tells its own story. Delta 1 contained administrative offices and preliminary research stations, where theoretical work was done and experiments planned. Delta 2 housed the main teleportation labs, where prototype devices were tested and refined. Delta 3 contained the advanced research sector, where successful experiments were scaled up and weaponized. And Delta 4 served as the communications hub linking all sectors together. This progression from theory to application to weaponization shows the UAC's intent clearly. Teleportation wasn't being developed for civilian transport or peaceful exploration. From the start, this was military research, aimed at creating strategic advantages in deployment and logistics. Test subjects for the teleportation experiments began showing psychological trauma early in the research program. The effects weren't immediate or obvious. Subjects would complete teleportation successfully, their physical bodies arriving intact at the destination coordinates. But they reported disturbing experiences during transit, sensation of being watched, glimpses of places that weren't the origin or destination points, hearing voices speaking languages they didn't understand. Some described it as falling through somewhere else, a middle space that wasn't supposed to exist, where the normal rules of reality didn't apply. The medical staff documented these effects carefully. Increased anxiety, insomnia, reported nightmares featuring places and beings the subjects couldn't have encountered normally. Some test subjects began claiming they could still hear the voices after teleportation ended, whispering to them during sleep, showing them visions. A few requested psychological counseling. Several refused to participate in further experiments despite financial penalties. One subject reportedly had a complete psychological breakdown, claiming something followed him back through the portal and was now watching him constantly. Betruger's response to these reports is documented in interdepartment emails that paint a damning picture. Rather than investigating the psychological effects as potential evidence of unknown dangers, he classified the reports as expected side effects of a new technology, compared it to motion sickness or jet lag, temporary discomfort that would fade with repeated exposure and familiarity. He ordered medical staff to emphasize the physical safety of teleportation in their reports while minimizing or omitting psychological complaints. Test subjects who continued reporting problems were quietly released from the program and replaced with others, their data flagged as outliers caused by pre-existing psychological fragility. What's particularly chilling about Delta Labs is how ordinary it initially appears. Walking through the facility early in Doom 3, you see pristine hallways with safety posters on the walls reminding workers about proper hazmat protocols. Break rooms where employees took coffee breaks and complained about management. Meeting rooms where presentations about quarterly targets were given. Supply closets, restrooms, water coolers, all the mundane infrastructure of any modern workplace. Scientists ate lunch at their desks while reviewing data. Engineers played cards during breaks. Security guards walked patrol routes that rarely encountered anything worth reporting. The juxtaposition between this mundane corporate environment and the cosmic horror it unleashed creates unique dread. These weren't evil masterminds in dark towers conducting sinister rituals. They were middle managers and engineers, people with families and mortgages and retirement plans, who came to work each day and helped open a gateway to hell because it was their job, because they had deadlines to meet, because their performance reviews depended on showing progress. The banality of evil has never been more literal than in the sterile corridors of Delta Labs, where bureaucracy and ambition collaborated to end the world. By the time the player reaches Delta Labs in Doom 3, the invasion is well underway, and the facility shows clear evidence of the transformation. Demonic corruption bleeds through walls, organic growth spread across metal surfaces, impossible architecture appears where storage rooms should be. You find bodies of scientists and security personnel, some killed by demons, others showing signs of transformation into demonic entities themselves. The teleportation equipment operates wildly, portals opening spontaneously to locations that shouldn't exist. The facility itself seems to be phasing between dimensions, simultaneously in Mars and Hell. Delta Labs represents the moment when human ambition crossed a threshold it shouldn't have approached. The experiments didn't fail due to equipment malfunction or calculation error. They succeeded perfectly, opening portals exactly as designed. The failure was conceptual. The scientists assumed they were discovering new physics when they were actually making contact with beings who had been waiting millennia for someone to open a door. Delta Labs' tragedy wasn't technical but philosophical. They asked, "Can we do this?" without ever seriously considering, "Should we do this?" That hubris, that certainty that human intelligence could control any force it discovered, led directly to humanity's near extinction. The labs stand as a monument to the idea that some doors should remain closed, some questions unanswered, some knowledge forbidden, not because we can't obtain it, but because the cost of obtaining it is everything we are. 17. The Marine's background, the wrong place at the right time. Doom 3's protagonist has more concrete characterization than any previous Doom Marine, though the game wisely keeps much of it environmental and implied rather than explicitly stated. He arrives on Mars as a replacement for a soldier killed in an accident. The game doesn't specify what kind of accident, leaving players to wonder if it was genuinely mishap or something more sinister, perhaps an early casualty of experiments already going wrong. This immediately marks him as an outsider arriving into an established social structure where everyone else has history, relationships, and existing alliances. He's the new guy, and in military culture, that's a disadvantaged position. His commanding officer, Sergeant Kelly, makes it clear from the first conversation that he doesn't particularly like the new arrival, having preferred his predecessor. The previous Marine was experienced, reliable, integrated into the unit. The new Marine is an unknown quantity, someone Kelly has to evaluate and incorporate into his team's dynamics. Kelly's assignment of tasks reflects this. The new Marine gets all the worst jobs, the boring detail work that no one wants. Equipment checks, where you walk around the facility verifying that machinery is functioning properly. Supply runs, moving crates from one location to another. These aren't assignments given to valued team members. They are tasks handed to the person lowest in the social hierarchy. The other Marines view him with similar distance. There's no hostility exactly, but no warmth either. He's the new guy who hasn't proven himself, hasn't shared the boring months of guard duty or the off-duty bonding that creates unit cohesion. In the opening sequence, while other Marines are engaged in casual conversation, trading jokes and complaints, the protagonist stands apart and integrated. He exists in the social structure but isn't truly part of it. This isolation, which initially seems like negative character development or poor storytelling, becomes crucial to understanding why he survives what comes next. When hell breaks loose during the initial invasion wave, this marginalization becomes salvation. Because he's not at his assigned post, he's off doing some menial task far from the main security stations, he survives the coordinated assault that kills most of the facility's security team. While experienced Marines die at their posts, following protocols that prove useless against interdimensional invasion, the new Marine is somewhere else, doing a job too unimportant to place him at the epicenters of demonic emergence. The irony is perfect. Being considered unimportant and given throwaway assignments puts him in exactly the right place to survive. His unfamiliarity with the base layout, initially a disadvantage, becomes an advantage when normal routes are cut off. Experienced Marines know the efficient paths through the facility, the standard evacuation routes, the rally points where squads would regroup. But these predictable movements make them vulnerable to demons who quickly learn patrol patterns. The new Marine doesn't know the standard routes, so he takes improvised paths, accessing areas through unconventional means, finding ways through the chaos that more experienced personnel wouldn't consider because they are too attached to proper procedures. The psychological aspect of his survival is equally important. He hasn't had time to form strong bonds with other Marines, hasn't developed friendships that would make him hesitate to leave areas where others might still be alive. More experienced soldiers try to rescue trapped teammates, regroup with their squads, follow chains of command that no longer exist. These impulses, admirable in normal combat, get them killed when facing a threat that doesn't follow the rules of normal warfare. The new Marine, lacking these established bonds and protocols, falls back on pure survival instinct. Move forward, stay alert, kill anything that's trying to kill you. His isolation becomes strength, while squads of Marines are overwhelmed by coordinated demon attacks that exploit their tendency to stay together and follow military doctrine. He moves alone, unpredictable, impossible for Hell's forces to anticipate. He doesn't have backup, but he also doesn't have the vulnerability that comes with trying to protect others or maintain unit cohesion. Every decision is personal, every risk assessment individual. He can retreat without feeling like he's abandoning teammates, advance without waiting for orders that will never come, adapt without having to coordinate with others. The irony isn't lost on players who've followed the series. Once again, a Doom Marine survives not through being the best soldier, but through being in the right place at the right time with the temperament to keep moving forward when everyone else falls. The original Doom Marine was punished with assignment to Mars and then happened to be off-base during the initial invasion. This Marine is marginalized within his unit and given unimportant tasks that place him away from the disaster's epicenter. In both cases, being outside the primary group, being isolated from the social and command structures, enables survival. There's perhaps an underlying message. Conformity and integration, while valuable in normal circumstances, become liabilities when facing unprecedented threats. The outsiders survive because they are not invested in systems that catastrophically fail. 18. Hell's architecture, the geometry of damnation. One of Doom's most consistent elements across all games, from the original 1993 release through Doom Eternal, is Hell's distinctive architecture. It's not random chaos or artistically arbitrary design. It's a deliberate aesthetic that combines organic and mechanical elements in profoundly disturbing ways. Walls are made of flesh, yet they pulse with technological lights. Metal grates cover biological surfaces that breathe. Corridors twist in ways that defy spatial logic, leading to places they physically shouldn't reach. Rooms are simultaneously too large for the spaces they occupy and too confined for the number of entities within them, creating a sense of spatial wrongness that affects players on a subconscious level. This isn't just artistic license or limitation of game engines, it's a fundamental characteristic of Hell itself, an expression of its nature as a dimension that operates under different physical laws than our own. The recurring visual motifs scattered throughout Hell's landscapes tell their own story. Pentagrams and inverted crosses aren't just generic occult imagery, but specific symbols suggesting that Hell's architecture is ritualistic. Every surface is part of a larger spell, a dimensional anchor that keeps Hell's realm stable as it invades our universe. The architecture itself is functional, serving purposes beyond aesthetics or shelter. The flesh walls deserve particular examination because they are so consistent across Doom's various iterations. In the original games, technological limitations meant these walls were textured surfaces, but the implication was clear. These weren't synthetic or sculptural representations of flesh but actual biological tissue, living or preserved, forming the structure of Hell's buildings. Doom 3's improved graphics made this explicit, showing walls that visibly pulse, that bleed when damaged, that seem to breathe and react to the player's presence. Doom 2016 and Eternal confirmed this with high-fidelity visuals showing veins carrying fluids through organic walls, muscle tissue flexing, neural tissue responding to stimuli. But whose flesh? The codex entries and environmental storytelling suggest a horrifying possibility. The walls might be the remains of victims, their bodies literally incorporated into Hell's structure after death. This would explain why Hell's architecture expands with each successful invasion. It's not just claiming territory, it's consuming the conquered and recycling them into raw building material. Every person killed by demons doesn't just die. They become part of Hell itself, their physical form processed and integrated into the dimension's growing structure. Hell isn't just a place of suffering, it's a place built from suffering, constructed from the remains of those it conquers. The impossible geometry common to Hell's design deserves deeper analysis. Corridors that loop back on themselves in ways that violate topology. Rooms larger inside than outside. Stairways that lead up but somehow arrive lower than where they started. Doorways positioned where two rooms should overlap but somehow don't. This isn't just confusing level design. It's evidence that Hell exists in more dimensions than the three spatial ones humans can perceive. What we see when looking at Hell's architecture are three-dimensional cross-sections of higher dimensional spaces. Think of it this way. Imagine a two-dimensional being trying to understand a three-dimensional room. They'd see only slices, cross-sections that wouldn't make complete sense because they lack the perspective to perceive depth. Similarly, humans viewing Hell's architecture are seeing three-dimensional slices of spaces that exist in 4, 5, or more spatial dimensions. This explains the impossible connections, the rooms that are too large, the corridors that twist in ways that shouldn't work. Hell's spaces genuinely do connect in ways our three-dimensional brains can't properly process. The disorientation players feel navigating Hell isn't just confusion. It's the cognitive strain of trying to make sense of higher dimensional geometry using three-dimensional intuition. This dimensional disparity has tactical implications. Demons, being native to this higher dimensional space, navigate it naturally. They can move through Hell's architecture using paths that are literally invisible to human perception, appearing to teleport when they are actually just moving through spatial dimensions we can't see. This gives them inherent advantages when fighting in their home dimension. The Doom Slayer's effectiveness in Hell, then, is even more impressive. His fighting in a space that his human brain can't fully comprehend, against enemies who have dimensional advantages he can never completely overcome, yet he wins through sheer determination and adaptability. Some players have noted that staring too long at Hell's architecture in-game creates genuine unease, a low-level anxiety that goes beyond normal game tension. This might be because the designers, consciously or not, tapped into something primal in our spatial reasoning systems. Our brains evolved to navigate three-dimensional space efficiently, to quickly assess rooms and corridors for threats and exits. When presented with spaces that violate this geometry, even in virtual form, our threat detection systems activate, creating instinctive unease. We're looking at architecture that our brains recognize as fundamentally wrong, as violating rules so basic we don't usually consciously acknowledge them. The religious and occult symbolism laid throughout Hell's design adds another dimension to its meaning. Pentagrams aren't just decoration, but functional components of a massive, dimension-spanning ritual. The inverted crosses aren't merely blasphemous. They represent inversion of creation's principles, reality running backward, entropy accelerating. The skeletal and demonic imagery isn't meant to frighten but to remind. This is what happens to those who fall to Hell. You are not immune. Your flesh will become these walls. Your skull will decorate these altars. The architecture is warning and prophecy, showing all who enter what they will become. Hell's architecture ultimately represents the dimension's fundamental nature. It's predatory, consuming, expanding by converting and corrupting everything it touches. The organic components show its living nature. Hell isn't a dead place but a hideously alive one. The technological elements show intelligence and purpose. This isn't random growth but designed expansion. The impossible geometry shows its alien nature. This is genuinely another dimension, operating under rules incomprehensible to human minds. Walking through Hell's corridors, fighting in its chambers, a player experiences environmental storytelling more effective than any dialogue. You are in a place that shouldn't exist, fighting for a species that accidentally opened a door to its own extinction. The walls themselves are proof that Hell's victory means not just death but transformation, incorporation, eternal existence as part of a dimension built on suffering. 19. The Lost Mission, Resurrection of Evil. Doom 3's expansion, Resurrection of Evil, introduced a compelling side story that many players overlooked but which adds crucial layers to understanding Hell's invasion strategy. Before the events of Doom 3, before the main invasion that devastated the UAC's Mars facilities, the corporation had sent a previous expedition to explore ruins found deep beneath the planet's surface. This archaeological mission, designated as a scientific survey rather than military operation, made the discoveries that would set everything else in motion. They found the ancient Martian civilization, its warnings about Hell, the Soul Cube, and something else, something that should have been left buried. The expedition discovered an artifact of immense demonic power, what they initially classified as a Martian relic, but which was actually something far more sinister, a heart that still beat despite being separated from its body, preserved through means that violated everything science understood about biology and decomposition. The team's xenobiologist documented the artifact extensively, noting that it seemed to pulse in rhythm with energies detected coming through the experimental teleportation portals. It wasn't dead organic matter, it was alive in some fundamental sense, waiting. Against all scientific judgment, against the warnings carved into the very temple where they found it, they brought the artifact back to the UAC facility for study. This decision proved catastrophic in ways they couldn't have anticipated. The heart wasn't just powerful, it was a beacon, a signal broadcasting across dimensions. To Hell's forces, it was a homing signal in our universe, a piece of their dimension existing in ours, creating a sympathetic resonance that made Earth's reality easier to breach. The teleportation experiments didn't just randomly contact Hell. They were drawn to Hell because the heart made Hell's dimension more accessible, more visible to our scientific instruments. The UAC's researchers thought they were making breakthrough discoveries, but they were actually following a trail the heart created, leading them inexorably toward opening portals to exactly where the artifact wanted them to reach. The Resurrection of Evil campaign follows a different Marine, part of a rapid response team sent to investigate communication loss with the main UAC facility. This places the expansion's events slightly after Doom 3's main campaign. The initial invasion has been repelled, the Marine has closed the main portal, and Earth believes the crisis has ended. But this Marine's team discovers that the initial invasion wasn't the full extent of Hell's plan. It was merely the opening move. The Heart's presence on Mars has created a permanent weak point in dimensional barriers, a wound in reality that Hell can exploit even after the main portals are closed. What he discovers is that the invasion had phases and objectives beyond simple destruction. The first wave was about establishing chaos, killing defenders, and opening as many portals as possible. But the second phase, now beginning, is about recovery and activation. Hell's forces are specifically hunting for the heart, attempting to recover it and perform some ritual that would activate its full power. The Marine encounters new demon types, artifact hunters, elite units that retained their combat skills but served Hell now, specifically tasked with finding the heart and bringing it to Hell's most powerful entities currently manifesting on Mars. This narrative device, revealing that Hell's invasion had strategic depth, specific objectives beyond mindless slaughter, added intelligence to the demon forces that made them more threatening. They weren't just attacking randomly, they were executing a plan. The demons you fight in Resurrection of Evil are more organized than those in Doom 3's main campaign. They guard specific locations rather than wandering aimlessly. They appear to coordinate, with some demons providing covering fire while others advance. This suggests a command structure, leaders making tactical decisions, which raises disturbing questions about what intelligence guides Hell's armies and how it adapts to opposition. The expansion also introduced the Grabber, a mysterious artifact that allows the Marine to capture and use demonic powers. This device wasn't human invention. It was reverse-engineered from demonic technology found in the Martian ruins. The implication is staggering. Hell's forces use technology. They have tools and weapons that can be understood and replicated. This wasn't magic in the supernatural sense. It was science so advanced it appeared magical to human understanding. The Grabber specifically allowed the Marine to enter Hell time, slowing everything except himself, effectively giving him supernatural speed from others' perspectives. The existence of Hell time raises profound questions about Hell's dimensional nature. If time can be manipulated there, does time even flow linearly in Hell? Perhaps time in Hell's dimension is variable, flowing at different rates in different regions, or even backward in some locations. This might explain how demons can seem to appear from nowhere. They are not teleporting. They are moving through time differently than we do. It could also explain the Doom Slayer's later near-invincibility. If he learned to perceive and move through time differently after eons in Hell, he would appear impossibly fast to normal humans and demons alike, reacting before attacks happen from his perspective. The Heart of Hell itself, the artifact at the expansion's center, reveals crucial information about Hell's nature when you finally encounter it being used. It's not just a power source. It's part of a living entity, something that was dismembered but not killed, its pieces scattered across dimensions to weaken it. When Hell's forces attempt to use the heart in a ritual, you see its true purpose. It's meant to serve as a dimensional anchor, a permanent tear in reality stable enough to allow Hell's most powerful entities to cross over fully. The lesser demons that invaded through portals were just advanced forces. The heart would allow Titan-class demons, beings of such power that their full manifestation in our dimension would be apocalyptic, to enter Earth's reality. Stopping the ritual and destroying the heart isn't just about defeating this invasion wave. It's about closing a vulnerability in Earth's dimensional barriers. The fact that Hell had planned this, that the entire initial invasion might have been about creating conditions to activate the heart, shows sophisticated strategic thinking that should terrify humanity. Hell doesn't just invade blindly. It plans, it stages operations, it uses misdirection and multi-phase strategies. The question becomes, what else has Hell placed in our universe? What other artifacts or weak points exist that we haven't discovered? How many other plans does Hell have in motion? waiting for the right moment to activate. Resurrection of Evil revealed that beating Hell once isn't enough. It's an ongoing war of intelligence and counterintelligence, where humanity is constantly discovering that what seemed like victory was just surviving one phase of a much larger invasion strategy. 20. The Grabber and Hell Time, Stolen Powers. In Resurrection of Evil, the protagonist gains access to a mysterious artifact called the Grabber, which marks a significant moment in Doom's lore. The first time a human successfully captures and weaponizes demonic power for extended use. This wasn't a human invention. It was reverse-engineered from demonic technology found in the Martian ruins, suggesting that the ancient Martians had achieved similar breakthroughs before their extinction. The device appears as a kind of gauntlet or glove attachment. It's designed clearly inhuman, featuring geometries and interfaces that human hands weren't designed to operate but can be adapted to with effort. The Grabber's primary function is absorbing and redirecting demonic energy. When a demon dies in proximity to the device, the Grabber can capture the residual energy and store it for later use. This reveals something fascinating about demons. They are not just biological entities but energy beings that leave measurable, harvestable power signatures when killed. This energy can then be channeled into several effects, the most significant being Hell Time, which slows the perception of time for everything except the user. From the Marine's perspective, everything around him moves in slow motion. From observers' perspectives, he's moving with impossible speed. But calling it time manipulation might be technically incorrect. The Grabber likely doesn't actually alter time's flow. Instead, it may alter the user's dimensional positioning, moving them slightly out of phase with normal reality's temporal flow. This would explain why the effect is localized to the user rather than affecting an area or the entire dimension. The Marine isn't speeding up or slowing down time. He's accessing the same dimensional flexibility that allows demons to appear and disappear seemingly at will. He's operating partially in Hell's dimensional framework, where time doesn't flow the same way it does in our three-dimensional reality. This has profound implications for understanding Hell's nature. If time can be manipulated there, if temporal flow is variable or nonlinear, then Hell exists in a fundamentally different physical framework than our universe. Time might not be a constant in Hell but a variable, flowing at different rates in different regions, perhaps even reversing in some areas. This would explain several previously mysterious demon abilities. They don't teleport, they timeshift, moving through temporal dimensions the same way we move through space. Their ability to coordinate despite lacking visible communication might be temporal rather than telepathic. They are operating across multiple time streams simultaneously. The fact that the Grabber was reverse-engineered from demonic technology suggests Hell's forces use equipment. They have technological development and tool creation beyond just biological weapons and claws. This completely reframes demons from mindless monsters to an advanced civilization with engineering, research and development, and iterative technological improvement. The weapons demons carry aren't just organic growths. They are designed, manufactured tools optimized for specific purposes. This makes Hell's threat even more severe. They are not just overwhelmingly numerous, they are technologically sophisticated. The Martians clearly understood this, as evidenced by their successful reverse engineering of demonic technology to create early Grabber prototypes. Their research notes, scattered throughout the ruins, show they studied captured demons extensively, dissecting not just their biology but their equipment, attempting to understand the principles underlying demonic technology. Some texts suggest they achieved limited success, creating devices that could briefly interface with Hell's dimensional framework. But this knowledge couldn't save them. Understanding their enemy's technology wasn't enough to overcome the numerical and dimensional advantages Hell possessed. Using the Grabber comes at a cost that's not immediately obvious to players. Each use drains the captured demonic energy, requiring fresh kills to recharge. But there's a deeper cost suggested by subtle environmental cues and character reactions. The device is contaminating, spiritually if not physically. Using demonic power, even to fight demons, creates a resonance with Hell's dimension. The Marine who uses the Grabber extensively begins experiencing effects similar to what teleportation test subjects reported. Hearing whispers, seeing glimpses of Hell even when not actively fighting, feeling watched. The device is useful but dangerous, a tool that requires its user to partially operate on Hell's terms. This foreshadows a key theme in later Doom games. To fight Hell effectively, you must understand Hell, must use Hell's own principles against it, must become partially of Hell yourself. The Doom Slayer's later empowerment through Hell's own energy, his use of Argent power absorbed from slain demons, his ability to navigate Hell's dimension as effectively as demons, all of this builds on the principle established by the Grabber. Hell can be fought with its own weapons, but using those weapons changes the wielder. The question becomes, how much can you use Hell's power before you become what you're fighting? The Grabber also proves something crucial about dimensional barriers. They are permeable in both directions. If humans can capture and use Hell's energy, it follows that Hell can capture and use our energy, which is exactly what Argent energy production does, converting human souls into power that Hell then uses to fuel its operations. The Grabber demonstrates that dimensional energy transfer isn't impossible. It just requires technology sophisticated enough to bridge the dimensional gap. The UAC would later scale this concept up to industrial levels, creating massive energy extraction systems. But the principle was proven here, in this artifact that fits on a hand, showing that Hell's power could be stolen and weaponized by those brave or foolish enough to do so. 21. Doom 2016. The Return of the Slayer. In 2016, Doom returned after over a decade of relative silence, and it brought with it a radical reimagining of the franchise's lore that somehow felt both completely new and perfectly continuous with everything that came before. The game opens with the Doom Guy, now explicitly called the Doom Slayer, waking up from a sarcophagus on Mars, still in Hell's dimension but somehow brought back to our world. The opening seconds establish everything about the character's evolution. A demon approaches the chained Slayer, preparing to attack, and without hesitation, without fear, the Slayer breaks his chains and tears the demon apart with his bare hands. No weapons, no armor protection, just raw physical strength and uncontainable rage. This wasn't a desperate survivor fighting for his life. This was an apex predator unleashed on prey that had forgotten what true terror means. The demon's approach showed it didn't recognize the threat, didn't understand what it was facing. Hell's forces, it seems, had forgotten or never knew about the Marine who chose to stay in their dimension. Perhaps they thought he was dead, consumed by Hell's torments. Perhaps they assumed time and suffering had broken him, transformed him into just another damned soul screaming in the darkness. They were catastrophically wrong. The Doom Slayer had been in Hell for eons, not suffering but fighting, not breaking but becoming stronger, evolving from human soldier into something Hell itself feared. What makes Doom 2016's approach so brilliant is its confidence. The game doesn't explain itself, doesn't stop to justify its premise or apologize for its pulpy concept. When Samuel Hayden, the UAC's cyborg director, tries to explain the situation over communications, providing context and mission objectives, the Slayer simply smashes the communications equipment and keeps moving. This single act became iconic, perfectly capturing the character's attitude. He doesn't need context or justification. There are demons. He kills them. That's the entire relationship. The story can unfold around him, but is not interested in participating in it beyond the violence. This characterization could have been one-dimensional or boring, but it works because of what it reveals about the Slayer's evolution. He's not ignoring Hayden because he's stupid or can't understand complex situations. He's ignoring him because he's been fighting Hell for eons and has learned that demons lie, that their allies lie, that everyone involved with dimensional energy has an agenda. The Slayer has transcended politics and philosophy. He exists in a pure state of purpose. His goal is simple, his methodology direct, and he's learned through centuries of combat that complexity only creates opportunities for corruption and betrayal. The story unfolds through environmental storytelling and codex entries rather than lengthy cutscenes, allowing players to engage as deeply or shallowly as they prefer. This represents ID Software learning from both their own history and the broader evolution of narrative design in games. The original Doom's minimalist storytelling worked because it respected players' agency. You could project your own narrative onto the silent protagonist. Doom 3's attempt at traditional storytelling had been criticized for interrupting gameplay. Doom 2016 found the perfect balance. The story is rich and deep for those who want to explore it, but invisible to those who just want to kill demons. For players who did dig into the lore, Doom 2016 revealed a mythology that retroactively connected every previous game into a single timeline while dramatically expanding the scope. The Doom Slayer is explicitly the same Marine from the original games, confirmed by Easter eggs and codex entries referencing events from classic Doom. But he's been transformed, enhanced, empowered by forces that the 2016 game only hints at: the Night Sentinels, the Makers, the Divinity Machine. These elements wouldn't be fully explained until Doom Eternal, but they are present in 2016 as mysterious background, suggesting depths to the universe that extended far beyond the Mars invasion. The game also reveals through scattered codex entries that Hell's forces fear the Slayer, that he's not just an effective fighter but a legendary figure in their dimension. Demon inscriptions speak of him in religious terms, as a force of nature or wrathful god rather than a mortal enemy. The Slayer's testaments, written by demons themselves, document how he ravaged through hell for ages, unstoppable and unkillable, driven by something they cannot comprehend: righteous fury that never diminishes, determination that cannot be broken, purpose that transcends self-preservation. To Hell, the Slayer isn't just dangerous, he's incomprehensible, a being whose motivation they cannot understand and therefore cannot predict or counter. The narrative reveals that Hell's forces finally stopped him not through combat, which had proven impossible, but through trickery. They collapsed a temple on him and entombed him in a sarcophagus blessed by their dark priests. Even then, they couldn't kill him, they could only imprison him and pray he never escaped. The fact that Hayden and the UAC brought this sarcophagus to their Mars facility, that they were studying it and attempting to access whatever was inside, shows the characteristic UAC combination of curiosity and catastrophic poor judgment. They found a coffin covered in warnings written in dead languages, sealed with rituals meant to last forever, and decided to open it to see what was inside. Doom 2016's return positioned the Slayer not as humanity's soldier, but as an independent force pursuing his own agenda that happens to align with human survival. He doesn't take orders from Hayden or anyone else. He doesn't care about the UAC's energy crisis or Earth's political situation. He cares about one thing: destroying Hell's ability to invade our dimension. If that means sabotaging Hayden's research, destroying valuable equipment, or collapsing entire facilities, the Slayer does it without hesitation. This creates tension throughout the game. Hayden wants to use the Slayer as a weapon while maintaining control over Argent energy production, but the Slayer's goal is to eliminate Argent energy entirely, even if it causes short-term hardship for humanity. The game's ending crystallizes this conflict. After defeating the Spider Mastermind and closing the main Hell portal, the Slayer prepares to destroy the Argent energy production equipment entirely. Hayden intervenes, using Vega's computational power to trap the Slayer in a teleportation field, then takes the Crucible, a blade of pure energy capable of permanently killing demons, and seals the Slayer away again. It's a betrayal, but one Hayden justifies as necessary. Humanity needs Argent energy, and the Slayer would destroy it out of principle. This ending sets up Doom Eternal, while also reinforcing the Slayer's status. Even humanity's nominal allies will betray him if his goals threaten their interests. The Slayer stands alone, fighting a war everyone else is willing to compromise on, maintaining standards no one else can meet. He's not just fighting demons, he's fighting the corruption that makes humans vulnerable to demonic influence in the first place. 22. The Betrayer's Tale, a Father's Ultimate Sin. Deep in Hell's landscape in Doom Eternal, players can encounter one of the most tragic figures in the entire franchise, the Betrayer, a former commander of the Night Sentinels whose single act of weakness led to the fall of an entire dimension. His story represents the darkest version of a universal human experience, grief over a child's death, and shows how Hell exploits our deepest loves to achieve its conquest. The Betrayer was not evil by nature, not ambitious or corrupt like Dr. Betruger, not arrogant like the UAC's executives. He was simply a father who couldn't accept his son's death, and that human weakness became the lever Hell used to destroy an entire civilization. The Betrayer commanded forces in Argent, a dimension that stood against Hell's expansion for eons. His people, the Night Sentinels, were elite warriors enhanced by advanced technology and powered by their faith in the Wraith, a sacred entity that provided both spiritual guidance and actual defensive capabilities. The betrayer's son fought alongside him, a young warrior showing great promise, destined to become one of the Sentinel's greatest champions. But destiny can be cut short. The son died in battle against demonic forces, killed by a demon lord in combat that was, by all accounts, heroic but ultimately futile. The betrayer's grief was absolute. He couldn't accept that his son was simply gone, that all his potential and promise had been snuffed out. He performed the funeral rites, honored his son as Sentinel culture demanded, but internally he was breaking. He prayed to the Wraith for his son's return. He consulted every Sentinel archive about resurrection. He became obsessed with finding a way to undo what happened, to reverse death itself. This desperation made him vulnerable, created a weakness that Hell's intelligence network, always watching for opportunities, quickly identified and began to exploit. Hell's approach was subtle at first, not an overt offer but hints and suggestions planted where the betrayer would encounter them. Ancient texts mysteriously discovered that spoke of resurrection rituals. Captured demons who, under interrogation, mentioned that death wasn't permanent in Hell's dimension, that beings could be brought back. Whispers in his dreams showing his son alive and pleading for rescue. Hell orchestrated a psychological campaign targeting the betrayer's grief, slowly convincing him that resurrection was possible, that his son could return, if only he was willing to make certain compromises. The actual deal, when Hell finally made it explicit, was elegant in its simplicity. They would resurrect the betrayer's son. The cost wasn't his soul or his life, it was information. Hell needed to know the location of the Wraith, the entity that powered Argent Deimos defenses and made the dimension particularly difficult for Hell to conquer. The betrayer knew this location. It was one of his people's most closely guarded secrets, information that could doom their entire civilization if revealed. But he had been worn down by grief and hope, convinced himself that he could reveal the Wraith's location and then help protect it, that he could somehow have both his son returned and his civilization safe. He revealed the location. Hell kept its promise. The son lived again, returned from death with his body restored, his memories intact. The betrayer's joy was absolute, brief, and quickly transformed into horror. His son had returned wrong. The boy's body lived, but something essential was missing or corrupted. He spoke like his son, remembered like his son, but there was something behind his eyes that was alien, wrong, not the child who had died but something else wearing his form. The resurrection Hell performed wasn't true restoration. It was corruption, bringing back the body and some echo of the mind but fundamentally altering the essential nature of the being. Meanwhile, without the Wraith's protection, Argent Deimos defenses collapsed. Hell's forces invaded en masse, overwhelming the Night Sentinels despite their skill and valor. The dimension fell in a matter of weeks, its people killed or corrupted, its great cities transformed into extensions of Hell's realm. Millions died or worse, were captured and processed into Argent energy, their suffering refined into power for Hell's dimensional engines. An entire civilization was consumed because one father couldn't accept his son's death, because Hell understood human psychology well enough to exploit grief as a weapon. The betrayer's punishment was worse than death. He lived, forced to watch the consequences of his choice unfold across eons. His son, the child he'd damned his world to save, was taken by Hell's forces and transformed further, eventually becoming the icon of sin, a living weapon used to destroy countless worlds across multiple dimensions. The boy who should have been a hero became an engine of apocalypse, his very existence a monument to his father's weakness. The betrayer couldn't even find peace in death. Hell kept him alive, trapped in a nightmare dimension where he could witness the endless suffering his choice created. When the Doom Slayer encounters the betrayer in Doom Eternal, he finds a broken figure sitting beside a small shrine to his son, the only memorial that exists to the boy who died heroically the first time. The betrayer isn't defensive or justifying. He knows what he did, understands the magnitude of his sin. He offers the Slayer weapons and knowledge to help fight Hell, attempting in some small way to undo the damage he caused. But nothing can truly compensate for the destruction his weakness enabled. He is condemned to eternal existence, knowing that his love for his son, twisted by Hell's manipulation, became the weapon that destroyed everything his people built and believed in. The Betrayer's tale serves multiple purposes in Doom's mythology. First, it explains how Argent Dino fell despite being a civilization specifically designed to combat hell. Even the strongest defenses can be breached through psychological manipulation rather than military force. Second, it provides Origin's story for the icon of sin, transforming it from just a boss monster into a tragic figure, a victim of hell's corruption who should have died honorably but was instead resurrected and weaponized. Third, it establishes a crucial theme. Hell doesn't win through strength alone but through exploiting love, grief, and desperation. Most importantly, the Betrayer's story serves as a warning and a mirror. Every character in Doom who enables Hell's invasion does so through understandable human motivations. The UAC scientists seeking knowledge and progress, Betruger seeking significance and power, the Betrayer seeking his child's return. No one sets out to doom humanity or their civilization. They make local decisions that seem justifiable in context, rationalizing each step until they've crossed lines they never intended to approach. The Betrayer is the clearest example. His love for his son was not wrong, his grief was not evil, but Hell transformed these natural human emotions into tools of conquest. In this way, the Betrayer represents every human who has ever been exploited by Hell's forces. Not the purely evil or the deliberately malicious, but ordinary people with understandable desires who make terrible choices because Hell knows exactly which emotional buttons to push, exactly what offers to make, exactly how to transform love into leverage and grief into betrayal. The Betrayer's eternal punishment isn't Hell's cruelty, it's Hell's mercy, keeping him alive to serve as warning to others. No matter how justified you feel, no matter how much you love what you're trying to save, dealing with Hell only ever ends one way. 23. Argent Energy, the fuel of Hell. Doom 2016 and Eternal introduced Argent Energy as the cornerstone of their universe's mythology, and understanding what Argent Energy truly is reveals the depths of moral compromise that defines humanity's relationship with Hell. This wasn't just a powerful new energy source, wasn't simply science fiction fuel that made the plot work. It was refined suffering, the literal essence of tortured souls converted into usable energy through industrial-scale processing. The revelation of what Argent Energy actually is transforms the entire narrative from humans accidentally opened a portal to Hell, to humans deliberately chose to fuel their civilization with the screams of the damned. The discovery happened through the dimensional research that led to the Mars invasions. When UAC scientists first achieved stable portal generation, they didn't just find Hell. They found Hell's energy signature, a form of power that exceeded anything human technology had produced. Initial readings showed energy densities thousands of times greater than nuclear fusion, with no apparent fuel consumption or waste products. It seemed like the perfect solution to Earth's energy crisis: clean, unlimited power that could end resource wars, eliminate fossil fuel dependency, and provide unlimited energy for human expansion across the solar system. Samuel Hayden, the UAC's director, saw the opportunity immediately. Earth was facing environmental collapse from energy consumption, political instability from resource competition, and the looming threat of civilization-ending conflict over dwindling supplies. Argent Energy could solve all of this, could provide humanity with effectively unlimited power. The fact that it came from another dimension, that it required maintaining controlled access to what appeared to be Hell, seemed like acceptable risks when weighed against solving humanity's existential energy crisis. Hayden justified the program with utilitarian logic, the potential suffering of a few versus the definite benefit to billions. But the UAC's research gradually revealed the horrible truth about what Argent Energy actually was and how it was produced. The energy wasn't just dimensional radiation or exotic particles from Hell's unique physics. It was processed life essence, specifically the suffering of sentient beings converted into raw energy through Hell's dimensional machinery. The Tower of Babel, a massive structure in Hell that the UAC studied extensively, served as a processing facility where captured souls were subjected to torment that extracted their essential life force and refined it into Argent Energy. The process was industrial in scale and sophistication. Souls captured from invaded dimensions weren't simply killed or tormented randomly. They were fed into a systematic production chain. First, the soul was separated from its physical form, preventing death but maintaining consciousness. Then it was subjected to calculated suffering, not random torture, but precisely calibrated pain designed to generate maximum energy output. The essence released by this suffering was captured, filtered, and condensed into the glowing red energy humanity knew as Argent. The exhausted soul, once it could produce no more energy, was either recycled into Hell's architecture, becoming part of the walls and structures, or, if particularly strong-willed, transformed into new demons to serve Hell's armies. The moral implications are staggering, but what makes the situation truly damning is that the UAC knew this. Hayden knew it. Earth's leadership knew it. Internal documents scattered throughout the games make this explicit. They understood that Argent energy was refined suffering, that its production required Hell's torture infrastructure, that every light bulb powered by Argent energy represented someone, somewhere, experiencing unending agony. And they decided to use it anyway, justifying the decision with the same utilitarian arguments that have rationalized atrocities throughout history. The needs of the many outweigh the suffering of the few. But who were the few in this equation? Initially, the UAC claimed that Argent energy came from Hell's ambient environment, from demons themselves, from beings that weren't really sentient by human standards anyway. But the Codex entries reveal a darker truth. Hell captures souls from any invaded dimension, including dimensions with civilizations as advanced and conscious as humanity. The beings whose suffering powered human civilization weren't monsters or demons. They were people, likely very similar to humans, who had the misfortune of having their dimensions invaded by Hell before Earth's turn came. This transforms every object powered by Argent energy into an ethical nightmare. Your phone charging, your home's heating, your vehicle's power, all running on the refined suffering of beings who might have had families, hopes, fears, and dreams just like humans do. The banality of it is chilling. People went about their daily lives, using devices and infrastructure, never thinking about the torture their convenience required. Most humans probably didn't know the truth. The UAC would have kept the details classified, but ignorance doesn't eliminate culpability when the information was available to those willing to look. Hell's perspective on Argent energy reveals even more disturbing implications. From Hell's viewpoint, Argent energy production isn't evil. It's their entire economy and civilization's foundation. Hell exists in a dying dimension, cut off from the life force that sustained it when Jekad was paradise. Its inhabitants need to consume energy from other dimensions to survive, making interdimensional invasion not conquest but harvesting, not cruelty but necessity. From their perspective, humans using Argent energy makes humanity complicit in Hell's system, makes us partners in the exploitation rather than victims. We're not fighting against Hell's invasion, we're collaborating with it, accepting Hell's energy in exchange for tolerating its expansion into our dimension. This is why the Doom Slayer's goal in Doom 2016 isn't just to repel the invasion, but to destroy the Argent energy production infrastructure entirely. He recognizes what Hayden and Earth's leadership refuse to acknowledge. You cannot make deals with Hell, cannot accept its gifts without becoming complicit in its nature. Using Argent energy, even with the justification of solving humanity's energy crisis, creates a dependency that makes human civilization invested in Hell's continued operation. As long as we need the energy, we'll rationalize allowing the system that produces it. The Slayer's solution is radical: destroy it all, force humanity to find other solutions, accept short-term hardship to prevent long-term damnation. Hayden's opposition to the Slayer's approach creates the game's central philosophical conflict. Hayden argues that humanity needs Argent energy, that destroying it would cause civilization collapse, energy wars, billions of deaths from the resulting chaos. He's not wrong about the consequences. Abruptly eliminating Earth's energy source would be catastrophic. But the Slayer's counterargument, never stated verbally but clear through his actions, is that any civilization sustained by the torture of sentient beings deserves to collapse, that dependency on such an energy source is itself a form of damnation that will inevitably corrupt humanity completely. The Argent energy narrative ultimately poses an uncomfortable question to players. What would you do in humanity's position? If you could solve energy crisis, prevent environmental collapse, and enable unlimited technological progress, but the cost was tolerating, or even facilitating, the suffering of beings in another dimension whom you'd never see or hear from, would you do it? The game doesn't allow for comfortable answers, doesn't let players pretend the choice is simple. Hayden's arguments are rational and consequentialist. Real people would die without Argent energy, real suffering would occur from its elimination. But the Slayer's absolutism is also compelling. There are some lines that shouldn't be crossed, some prices too high to pay, even for survival. Argent energy stands as Doom's most sophisticated moral challenge, transforming the game from simple demon-slaying action into genuine ethical horror. It's not asking, how do we fight the monsters? It's asking, what if we are the monsters, benefiting from an atrocity we choose not to examine too closely? The glowing red energy that powers humanity's civilization is literally condensed suffering, and we use it to charge our phones. 24. Samuel Hayden's transformation, the man who became machine. Samuel Hayden presents one of science fiction's classic questions through his very existence. At what point does replacing parts of yourself make you stop being you? When we first meet Hayden in Doom 2016, he appears as a towering robotic form, 12 feet tall, composed of sleek metal and advanced circuitry. He explains that he was once fully human, a brilliant scientist and UAC director diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. Faced with death, he chose a radical solution, transferring his consciousness into a mechanical body, abandoning flesh entirely for synthetic immortality. The procedure wasn't just medical, it was philosophical, a statement that consciousness is information, and information can be transferred, preserved, and upgraded. The process of becoming a synthetic being raises profound questions that the game explores through Hayden's character. His brain, the physical organ that generated his thoughts, was carefully mapped at the neural level, every connection and structure recorded in perfect detail. This map was then used to create a synthetic neural network, a digital recreation of Samuel Hayden's brain structure. But was the consciousness that awakened in this synthetic brain actually Hayden? Or was it a perfect copy that believed itself to be Hayden while the original consciousness died with his biological brain? Hayden himself claims perfect continuity of experience, insists he's the same person. But how would a copy know it was a copy if it had all the original's memories? His towering robotic form became the UAC's symbol, walking proof that technology could conquer even death itself. Hayden presented himself as the future of humanity, enhanced, improved, freed from biological limitations. He could survive in environments that would kill humans, process information faster than organic brains, operate indefinitely without rest or sustenance. He became not just the UAC's director, but its living advertisement. This is what we can achieve, what humanity can become if we embrace technological transcendence over biological limitation. But Doom Eternal revealed a truth that recontextualizes everything about Hayden. He wasn't originally human at all. Samuel Hayden was actually Samamaker, a seraphim who had betrayed his own kind to empower the Doom Slayer eons ago. The entire human scientist with brain cancer backstory was an elaborate disguise, a carefully constructed persona that allowed him to operate within human society and guide events toward his own goals. His robotic body wasn't a response to human disease. It was a vessel designed to hide his true nature while maintaining enough power to influence events. This revelation casts every interaction from Doom 2016 in a new light. When Hayden argued with the Slayer about the necessity of Argent energy, was he genuinely conflicted about humanity's needs versus ethical concerns, or was he playing a role? When he spoke about solving Earth's energy crisis, was that authentic concern for human welfare, or was Argent energy production serving some larger agenda related to his maker origins? His actions often seemed contradictory. He enabled Hell's invasion by maintaining portal technology, but he also awakened the Doom Slayer to fight Hell. He argued for preserving Argent energy, but he also helped the Slayer navigate facilities and provided crucial intelligence about Hell's operations. The betrayal at the end of Doom 2016, when Hayden trapped the Slayer and took the Crucible, becomes more complex with this context. At face value, it appeared as simple villainy, Hayden using the Slayer as a weapon to eliminate Hell's forces while preserving the Argent energy infrastructure he valued. But knowing Hayden is actually Samamaker, the betrayal might have been strategic necessity. The Crucible, a weapon capable of permanently killing even immortal beings, was too dangerous to leave in anyone's hands at that moment. By taking it and sealing away the Slayer, Hayden might have been preventing premature confrontation with the Dark Lord, buying time to prepare for a final conflict that required precise timing. Sama Maker's original betrayal, stealing the Father's essence to power the divinity machine and enhance the Doom Slayer, was itself complex. He acted against Maker leadership's direct orders, knowing he'd be branded traitor. What motivated this? Pure selfless heroism seems unlikely for a being who'd lived for eons in a civilization defined by cold pragmatism. More likely, Sama recognized that the Maker's deal with Hell was unsustainable, that eventually Hell would consume everything including the Makers themselves. Creating the Doom Slayer was insurance, a weapon that could destroy Hell permanently even if it meant destroying the Maker civilization in the process. The Samuel Hayden persona, then, was a long-term infiltration operation. By becoming a human scientist and rising to control the UAC, Sama positioned himself to guide human-Hell relations, to influence which portals opened where, which research progressed when. He needed Hell to invade because Hell needed to be drawn into open conflict with the Doom Slayer. He needed Argent energy production to continue because it gave Hell investment in Earth, made the dimension valuable enough to commit major resources. He orchestrated conditions that would force confrontation between Hell's greatest weapons and his own greatest creation, the empowered Slayer. This makes Hayden one of the most complex characters in Doom's mythology, not a villain or hero but a being playing an impossibly long game, manipulating multiple civilizations toward a conclusion only he fully understands. His arguments for preserving Argent energy weren't necessarily lies. He might genuinely believe humanity needs it to survive, even while understanding that the energy comes from torture. His conflict with the Slayer isn't disagreement about goals but methodology. Hayden wants careful management of Hell's threat while extracting useful resources. The Slayer wants complete destruction regardless of cost. The ambiguity remains central to his character even after the Maker revelation. Is Samuel Hayden ultimately working for humanity's benefit? Or is he serving some Maker agenda that merely aligns with human survival temporarily? Does he actually care about the humans whose civilization he infiltrated? Or are they just pieces in a game between dimensions? His robotic form prevents reading his expressions. His emotionless voice makes gauging sincerity impossible. He provides help to the Slayer but also betrays him. He warns about Hell's danger, but maintains the systems that enable Hell's invasion. Hayden represents a truth about fighting eternal, multidimensional threats. The entities powerful enough to help you might have motivations you can't fully understand, agendas that span timelines longer than human civilization's existence. Accepting his help means accepting that you're part of a plan you don't fully comprehend, fighting battles that serve purposes beyond your immediate goals. The Doom Slayer's relationship with Hayden embodies this tension. He uses Hayden's resources and intelligence but never trusts him, never assumes their goals perfectly align. It's alliance born of necessity rather than trust, pragmatism rather than shared values. The question of whether Hayden is still the same person he was before becoming synthetic, or even before creating the Samuel Hayden persona, becomes almost absurdly complex. His Maker consciousness that chose to inhabit a synthetic human form while pretending to be a human consciousness that chose to inhabit a synthetic form. His layers of deception wrapped around a being whose original identity is itself mysterious. Perhaps the most honest answer is that Samuel Hayden is whoever he needs to be at any given moment: human scientist, Maker conspirator, pragmatic director, idealistic visionary. All of these identities real and fake simultaneously, worn as needed to advance goals that exist on timescales measured in eons. He's the perfect spy, so deep undercover that even his own nature becomes ambiguous, every action potentially serving multiple agendas depending on perspective. 25. The Dark Lord, the First God. Doom Eternal's lore reaches back to the literal beginning of creation to explain the conflict at the heart of the series, revealing that the battle between Doom's protagonist and Hell's forces is actually the latest chapter in a war that predates reality itself. Before there was anything, before dimensions, before matter or energy, before time, there was the void, pure nothing devoid of existence or potential. From this void emerged the first beings, the Father and the Dark Lord, two aspects of a single original consciousness that split into opposing forces that would shape everything to follow. The father represented creation, order, and light, the impulse toward structure and meaning. The Dark Lord, whose true name is Daveth, represented destruction, chaos, and darkness, the impulse toward entropy and change. Together, working in balanced opposition, they shaped reality from the void. The Father created dimensions, establishing the framework of space-time, creating the physical laws that would govern existence. Daveth created life within those dimensions, filling the empty spaces with beings capable of growth and transformation. They were complementary forces, neither good nor evil in isolation, each necessary for a complete universe. Their first collaborative creation was Jekad, meant to be paradise, the crown jewel of all creation, a dimension where life could flourish in perfect conditions, where beings could evolve to their highest potential. Daveth was given dominion over this realm, charged with filling it with life and guiding its development. For eons, Jekad thrived, its inhabitants evolving into a sophisticated civilization that combined technological advancement with spiritual enlightenment. Daveth took pride in his work, in the life and culture that flourished under his stewardship. But a philosophical divergence was growing between the Father and Daveth, a disagreement about the fundamental nature and purpose of existence. The Father believed in cycles, creation and destruction balanced, life emerging, flourishing, and eventually giving way to new life. Change through death, meaning through impermanence. Daveth came to believe this was waste, that death and decay were flaws in creation rather than features. Why should beings he'd nurtured eventually die? Why should civilizations fall? Why shouldn't existence move toward permanence rather than endless cycling? This ideological split led to actions that would define all future history. Daveth began experimenting with ways to make his creations immortal, to escape the cycle of death and rebirth. He delved into realms of knowledge that made the Father uncomfortable, seeking power over life and death that violated the natural order. The Father, growing concerned about where this path led, attempted to counsel Daveth toward acceptance of natural cycles. But Daveth saw this as the Father trying to maintain control, refusing to let creation reach its true potential. The breaking point came when the Father, fearing Daveth's growing power and the instability his experiments were creating across dimensions, made a unilateral decision. He sealed Jekad away from the other dimensions, cutting it off from the cosmic life force that sustained it. This wasn't done cruelly or suddenly. The Father likely believed it was temporary, a quarantine until Daveth could be reasoned with. But the effect was catastrophic. Isolated and cut off, Jekad began to die. The inhabitants, suddenly deprived of the energy that had sustained them, began experiencing mortality for the first time. Daveth's rage at this betrayal was absolute. The Father had destroyed paradise out of fear, had killed Daveth's creations to maintain control over the cosmic order. From Daveth's perspective, he wasn't the villain. He was trying to elevate existence beyond the Father's limited vision, and the Father destroyed everything rather than allow that evolution. This fundamental disagreement about whether death is natural or flaw, whether existence should be permanent or cyclical, drives the entire conflict that follows. Trapped in a dying dimension, Daveth and his people faced a horrifying choice: accept extinction, or find a way to survive. They discovered that they could extend their existence by consuming energy from other dimensions, by feeding on the life force of beings elsewhere. Initially, this might have been done reluctantly, a terrible necessity for survival, taking only what they needed to persist while hoping to eventually reconnect with the broader multiverse. But cut off indefinitely, with no hope of the Father relenting, they had to make it sustainable. This is when Jekad transformed into what we know as Hell. The consumption of external life force became systematic, industrialized. Beings from other dimensions were captured and processed, their essence extracted to fuel Hell's continued existence. The inhabitants evolved, or devolved, into forms optimized for this predation. They became demons not through curse or divine punishment, but through generations of adaptation to their new existence as interdimensional parasites. What had been a civilization of light and culture became something alien and terrible, shaped by endless hunger and resentment. Daveth himself underwent transformation, becoming the Dark Lord in more than just name. Eons of rage, grief over paradise lost, and the moral compromises required to keep his dimension functioning corrupted him fundamentally. He came to believe that the only solution was to break the seal, escape Jekad's prison, and reshape all of creation according to his will. If the Father wouldn't allow his vision of permanent existence, then Daveth would remake reality by force. Every invasion of other dimensions wasn't just for harvesting energy, it was testing defenses, building strength, preparing for the ultimate goal, overthrowing the Father and remaking all creation in Hell's image. Epilogue. This backstory reframes every demonic invasion in Doom's history. Hell's forces aren't evil for evil's sake. They are a corrupted civilization doing what they must to survive, driven by a leader nursing a legitimate grievance turned into cosmic-scale revenge fantasy. They are tragic as much as terrible, victims of the Father's decision to seal away their dimension, transformed into monsters by circumstances they didn't choose. This doesn't excuse the atrocities they commit, but it contextualizes them. Hell is what happens when a civilization is pushed to absolute desperation, when survival requires becoming what you would have once considered unthinkable. Until it is done,